Do you think technology has made people worse at finding their way? That's a part 3 question. And I want you to notice something. Most students hear that and immediately say yes or no, one word, maybe 2 sentences, and then they stop. But Band 8 candidates, they unpack it. They give a reason, they give an example, they consider the other side. And that one extra move is worth an entire band score. Today, we're going to show you exactly how to do it.
Welcome to the IELTS Speaking Podcast. I'm Anthony, and I'm joined, as always, by Felicity. Now, if you came here straight from episode 32, welcome back. If this is your first time, quick context. Part 3 is the abstract discussion phase of your IELTS speaking test. It's linked to the Part 2 topic, in this case, getting lost, but it pushes you into bigger, more conceptual territory. Society, technology, human behavior. And today's episode is going to give you a complete framework for handling those questions with 4 real examiner style questions and full Band 8 model answers for each one.
And just to be clear about what Part 3 actually tests, it's not your knowledge of technology or navigation. It's your ability to construct and express an opinion with fluency, range, and accuracy. The examiner genuinely doesn't care if your analysis of GPS is right or wrong. They care how well you argue it.
Which is enormously liberating once you internalize it. You don't need to be an expert. You need a structure. And today's structure is the cause and effect framework, one of the most powerful tools in the Part 3 toolkit. Here's how it works. For any cause and effect question, why has X happened or has X caused Y, you give a reason, you show the consequence, and then you acknowledge the other side. Reason, consequence, counterpoint. 3 moves, Band 8.
Let's go question by question. I'll play the examiner, Anthony gives the Band 8 answer, and then we break it down together. Question 1, the one we opened with. Do you think technology has made people worse at finding their way?
Honestly, I think it probably has, to a degree. I mean, the reason is fairly straightforward. GPS and navigation apps have made it almost effortless to get from A to B without really paying attention to the route. And the consequence of that is that a lot of people, myself included, if I'm being honest, have lost what you might call spatial awareness, that instinctive sense of direction, of knowing roughly where you are in relation to where you've been. Having said that, I think there's a strong counter-argument too. Technology has also made it far safer to be in unfamiliar places, especially for solo travelers, for people with disabilities, for anyone navigating a city in a language they don't speak. So I suppose my view is that it's a trade-off rather than a simple decline.
Okay, let's break that down. First thing I want to highlight, to a degree. Why does that phrase matter?
It's a hedging phrase. It immediately signals that you're not going to give a simplistic yes or no. You're acknowledging nuance from the very first sentence. Examiners are specifically listening for that. Probably, to a degree, to a certain extent, in some respects. These qualifiers tell the marker that you understand the complexity of the question even before you've said anything of substance.
Then you used what you might call spatial awareness. Talk about that construction.
So, what you might call is a sophisticated framing device. It lets you introduce a slightly technical or formal term while softening it. You're saying, this is the word that fits, though I'm aware it might sound formal. It's very natural in academic spoken English. And spatial awareness itself, SPATIAL, is exactly the kind of precise vocabulary that scores high on lexical resource. Compared to just saying sense of direction, it's a significant upgrade.
And the counter-argument move, having said that, that's the pivot, isn't it?
That's the pivot. Having said that is your signal to the examiner that you're about to consider the other side. And it's crucial in Part 3 because the examiner is specifically looking for candidates who can hold 2 ideas in tension, who don't just argue one direction and stop. Having said that, on the flip side, that said, though I should acknowledge, these are your counter-argument launchers. Learn a few, use them every time.
Okay, question 2. Do you think it's important for people to learn how to read maps?
That's an interesting one, actually, because I think the answer has changed quite significantly in the last 10 or 15 years. Traditionally, map reading was considered a kind of essential life skill, the sort of thing taught in school, used on camping trips. But I'd argue that in the current environment, the more pressing skill isn't map reading specifically, but rather navigational adaptability. The ability to find your way using whatever tools are available, whether that's a physical map, a phone, or just asking someone. I think what hasn't changed is the underlying value of not being helpless when you're lost. That capacity to stay calm, to problem solve, to get yourself oriented. That still matters. The medium has just shifted.
I love navigational adaptability. That's a wonderful original phrase.
And that's actually an important technique for part three, coining your own compound nouns or adjective noun combinations. Navigational adaptability, spatial reasoning, directional instinct. When you create a precise phrase rather than reaching for a generic one, the examiner notices. It signals genuine language flexibility, not rehearsed vocabulary.
You also said the more pressing skill. Pressing instead of important.
Exactly. Pressing means urgent of high priority. It's a more precise word than important, and it adds a sense of urgency to the argument. These single word upgrades, like pressing for important, fundamental for basic, erode for damage, foster for encourage, are what separate a band 6 vocabulary score from a band 7 or 8, one word at a time.
Question 3. This one's a bit more abstract. Examiners love this type. Why do you think some people have a better sense of direction than others?
Right. So, this is actually a question I find genuinely fascinating because I think the answer sits somewhere between nature and nurture. On one hand, there does appear to be a neurological component. Some research suggests that people who navigate intuitively have a more active hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for spatial memory. On the other hand, environment plays a huge role. People who grew up in grid based cities where streets are numbered and laid out in straight lines often find navigation in older, more winding cities quite disorienting, and vice versa. So I'd say it's a combination of innate ability and the kind of spatial reasoning that gets developed or not through your early environment.
You referenced research. Some research suggests. Is that risky if you're not sure it's accurate?
Not at all, and this is important for listeners to understand. Some research suggests, studies have indicated, there's evidence to suggest these are hedged academic phrases. You're not claiming something is proven fact, you're citing a general direction of evidence. And because you've hedged it, the examiner can't penalize you for inaccuracy. What they do credit you for is the attempt to ground your argument in something beyond pure opinion. It sounds analytical, it sounds considered, and it scores well.
Navigate intuitively. Navigate. Say a bit more about using the verb navigate versus find your way.
Find your way is perfectly fine, natural, common, no problem. But navigate is more precise and it's also more versatile. You can navigate a city, navigate a challenge, navigate a conversation, navigate a bureaucratic system. It's a word that works across contexts, which means once you've learned to use it comfortably in a speaking answer, it pays dividends across many different topics. That's what I'd call high value vocabulary. Words that are specific enough to impress, but flexible enough to use widely.
Okay, before we get to question 4 and your quick wins, let me jump in with something. If part 3 discussion language is an area you really want to nail, the opinion phrases, the cause and effect connectors, the counter argument pivots, all of that is in our free resource pack. The link is in the description below. Download it, print it, use it in your next practice session. It's completely free and it genuinely covers the language patterns that come up again and again in part 3.
Really worth it, especially for anyone with a test in the next few weeks. It'll save you a lot of guesswork.
Question 4. And this is the kind of curveball examiners throw in to push higher level candidates. Is there any value in getting lost?
I think there genuinely is, and I say that having thought about it quite a bit. There's something that happens when you're lost that doesn't happen in any other situation. You're forced to be fully present. You can't rely on autopilot. You have to engage with your surroundings, pay attention to landmarks, make decisions without certainty. And I'd argue that those are actually quite valuable cognitive experiences. They build resilience, spatial memory, and a kind of practical problem solving instinct that you simply don't develop when everything goes smoothly. Beyond the individual level, I think getting lost has a certain serendipitous quality. Some of the most interesting things I've encountered, places, people, experiences, happened because I wasn't where I intended to be. There's an argument to be made that our obsession with efficiency and optimized routes is actually costing us something.
That's beautiful and quite philosophical.
And that's actually fine in part three. The examiner wants to see sophisticated thinking. Going slightly philosophical, slightly unexpected, as long as your language holds up, is exactly what pushes you into Band 8 territory. The candidate who gives the surprising, well argued angle is the one the examiner remembers.
Serendipitous. Serendipitous. That's a gorgeous word.
It means a pleasant surprise, something good that happens by chance. And it's a word that almost no IELTS candidate uses, which means when you drop it naturally into a Part 3 answer, it genuinely lands. The examiner writes it down. That's what you want.
There's an argument to be made that. Explain why that phrase works so well.
It's an impersonal argument launcher. Instead of saying, I think yet again, you're saying there exists a valid argument. You're positioning yourself as someone who can see the logic of a position, even if it's not your primary view. It adds intellectual distance and sophistication. It also means you can argue a position you're not personally committed to, which is useful when the examiner asks you something you don't have a strong opinion on. You just say, there's an argument to be made that, and you're off.
Okay, quick wins. 3 things listeners can apply today.
Quick win number one, learn the cause and effect chain. One reason for this is, which has led to, which in turn has caused, if you can produce that 3-step chain fluently on any topic, you will sound analytical, structured, and fully in control of your argument. Practice it with any topic, not just navigation. Try it with technology, education, environment. Get the chain automatic.
Quick win number 2, always include a counterargument. Before you finish any Part 3 answer, say, having said that, or on the flip side, and give one sentence that acknowledges the other position. You don't have to change your opinion, you just have to show you can see both sides. That one move alone is worth a significant score improvement on your task response.
Quick win number 3, upgrade one word per answer. Pick one moment in each response where you can swap a generic word for a precise one. Decline instead of get worse. Foster instead of help create. Erode instead of slowly destroy. Navigate instead of find your way. One upgrade per answer. Over the course of a 5-minute Part 3, that's 5 upgraded words, and the cumulative effect on your lexical resource score is significant.
Cause and effect chain, the counterargument pivot, 1 vocabulary upgrade per answer. Part 3 is genuinely learnable. It just needs a framework, and now you have one.
Coming up next, episode 34. Quick fix number 1. We're giving you 10 filler phrases that buy you thinking time without losing fluency points. If you've ever gone blank in the exam and said, for 3 seconds while your score dropped, this one's for you. That's episode 34, and it's coming very soon.
Subscribe if you haven't. We're publishing multiple episodes a week right now, and every one is built around exactly this kind of insider breakdown. We'll see you in episode 34.